Welcome the Lord's chosen. When the clock strikes 0, it doesn't just end an old season, it detonates the beginning of a new one. Time has always been the invisible judge of every story. Empires rose and fell because a clock ran out. Fortunes were made or lost in seconds, and lives have changed with a single countdown. NASA spends billions making sure a rocket's countdown is flawless, because if even one calculation is off, the launch never happens. That same principle is at work in your life right now. The countdown you've been feeling wasn't a warning of their survival expiring. It was a signal that your launch sequence has been engaged. And here's the twist that will keep you awake tonight. Everything they did to stop you wasn't proof of their power. It was proof of your timing. Every rejection, every accusation, every hidden plan against you has only synchronized you with the exact second you were meant to take off. You thought the waiting was punishment, but waiting was the launch pad stabilizing beneath your feet. You thought the delays meant you were falling behind, but the delays were the very reason your timing is perfect now. Let's be real. If their plans worked, you'd already be out of the picture. They set traps. They dug pits. They engineered stories against you like they were applying for a degree in sabotage. And yet, you're still here. Not limping, not crawling, but standing right at the edge of a countdown that was never theirs to control. The truth? Their part in your story was only to provide the resistance that would prove your readiness. They were busy celebrating while you were busy maturing. Now their applause is gone, but your launch is live. And yes, laugh at the irony for a moment. The same people who swore you were finished are about to need sunglasses because your rise is going to blind them. They banked on your silence, bet on your delay, and invested in your rejection, only to discover those losses now convert into your payment. This is not their ending, it's your ignition. 3, 2, 1 wasn't their clock, it was yours. And today, you'll see why every setback was actually a setup, and why nothing can stop what's already in motion. This isn't motivation. This is the truth unfolding before your very eyes. Number 1, 3 a.m. isn't about time. It's about leverage. 3 in the morning is more than a time on the clock. It's a calculated choice. At that hour, the usual noise of government is silent. Phones stop ringing, inboxes stop filling, reporters are asleep, and the public isn't paying attention. Decisions made then slip past the ordinary friction of politics. It's not about urgency alone. It's about having a window when action can happen in near total darkness. The quiet is a form of cover, giving leaders room to move before daylight demands explanations. For the people inside those rooms, 3 a.m. is when hierarchy bends. Staffers who normally wait for layers of approval can speak directly to power. Advisors who might otherwise debate for hours know they have minutes. Fatigue sharpens the sense that every word counts, so only the starkest options survive. The atmosphere is part adrenaline, part dread, because everyone knows a single sentence could start a chain that can't be stopped. That hour also gives leverage to the information itself. News that breaks at noon gets processed by committees, pundits, and public opinion. News delivered before dawn strikes leaders in a vacuum. With no competing voices and no time for broad consultation, the first framing of the situation often becomes the only framing. Whoever wakes the president doesn't just report. They define the crisis. Their choice of words, urgent, imminent, catastrophic, can steer the next steps more than any later analysis. Outside those secure walls, the rest of the world stays unaware. Markets sleep. Journalists chase yesterday's story. Opponents, whether foreign governments or rival agencies, lose the advantage of anticipation. By the time the sun rises, the machinery of response may already be in motion, and everyone else is reacting to decisions made while they dreamed. That's why the 3 a.m. briefing carries a weight out of proportion to its clock time. It compresses power into a private, unrecorded interval where speed outruns oversight. The hour is a tool, chosen precisely because it strips away the safety nets of process. When a matter is labeled urgent enough for a pre-dawn call, it signals that normal rules no longer apply. The world may not know it yet, but the moment has already tilted while most people slept. Number 2, a file isn't a folder. It's a theory of you. A government file is never just a stack of papers or a digital folder with your name typed neatly on top. It's a living argument about who you are and what you might become. Every note, timestamp, and half-formed suspicion is chosen to tell a story the agency wants to believe, and maybe convince others to believe too. The data inside isn't neutral. It's filtered through the fears, agendas, and hunches of the people who compiled it. Think about how a single detail, where you travel, a late-night search on a forgotten website, a conversation overheard in a cafe, can take on a life of its own once it's written down. That detail becomes evidence of a pattern. That pattern becomes a theory. Soon the theory becomes the official version of you. And because it's sitting in a file with an official seal, it begins to feel more real than your own explanations. It doesn't matter whether the theory matches your daily reality. What matters is that someone powerful thinks it does. Inside those pages, motives are guessed at, connections are drawn, and meaning is attached to things you never intended as meaningful. A late payment could hint at desperation. A donation to an obscure cause could be labeled a signal of radical leanings. The people who review it may never meet you, but they feel as if they know you. They don't just record your actions, they decide what those actions mean. And that interpretation travels upward, feeding the decisions of others who might never bother to question the first assumption. Once a file like that exists, it shapes your future without you noticing. Maybe a background check takes longer. Maybe a border agent asks extra questions. Maybe an opportunity quietly evaporates. No one says it's because of the file, but the story it tells keeps rippling outward. You become a character in a narrative you didn't write and can't edit. This is why a government file isn't simply a record of facts. It's a framework, a hypothesis, a draft of the person you will be treated as if you already are. When someone in power opens it, they aren't just learning about you, they're deciding who you are allowed to be. Number 3, national priority means you now belong to the state's storyline. When a government labels someone a national priority, it isn't simply flagging a file for quick attention. It's drafting that person into the nation's grand narrative, making them a piece of a story bigger than any single life. The phrase sounds bureaucratic, but beneath the polite language is a shift of ownership. Your name, once just yours, now becomes part of the state's operating script. From that moment, decisions about you are no longer only about what you have done. They are about what you represent and how you fit into a national agenda. Being a national priority means every action connected to you is suddenly measured in terms of public consequence. A routine phone call, a bank transaction, or a casual trip can be reinterpreted as a potential signal of risk or importance. Agencies that would normally never cross paths begin sharing notes. Information moves faster and with fewer boundaries. You are no longer a private citizen in their eyes. You are a variable in the nation's security equation. The ordinary protections of privacy start to feel optional to those watching because priority status is a quiet permission slip to observe without asking. This shift also changes how decisions about you are made. Once your name enters the high-level briefings, you stop being a topic for routine paperwork and become a subject of strategy. Your life might be discussed alongside troop movements or diplomatic maneuvers. People who have never met you, advisors, analysts, cabinet members, debate your intentions as if you were a headline or a chess piece. Their conclusions can shape policies or trigger actions you'll never see coming. What makes this label powerful is that it doesn't require you to be guilty of anything. It's about potential, perception, and leverage. Maybe you hold information without realizing its value. Maybe your work or your voice touches a nerve in a larger conflict. Whatever the reason, the designation isn't about fairness. It's about how you fit into a story the government believes it must control. Once that story begins, it's hard to step out of it. National priority isn't just a phrase in a file. It's a signal that you are now part of the state's own narrative arc. Your name becomes shorthand for a set of fears, hopes, or calculations that reach far beyond your personal life, and those calculations start to move faster than you can. Number 4, the briefing room is a theater of quiet panic. Inside the presidential briefing room, the setting gives off an air of control, polished wood, soft lighting, and the faint hum of hidden electronics. It's meant to project certainty, but the real atmosphere is anything but serene. Every person at that table carries a private storm of calculations. They've already scanned reports, weighed threats, and imagined what could go wrong in the next hour, the next day, the next decade. The calm posture is performance, a way to reassure one another that someone is steering the ship, even when the water is black and churning. No one speaks quickly. Silence has weight, because each word must land with precision. A single careless phrase can set off a chain of responses across agencies and continents. Behind composed expressions, aides juggle mental flowcharts. If this happens, we counter with that. If that fails, we escalate here. They're trained to present options, but every option hides a dozen risks. That quiet is not peace. It's tension stretched tight enough to sing. Technology amplifies the pressure. Secure screens flicker with real-time updates, satellite images, intercepted messages, shifting data streams. Each new line of information might confirm a suspicion or blow apart an entire plan. Everyone present knows that the smallest oversight, a misread signal, a delay in response, can trigger consequences, measured in lives, markets, or even history books. The president at the center must appear unshaken, yet no one in the room is untouched by the possibility of failure. A briefing at this level isn't about solving a neat puzzle. It's about gambling with incomplete information, where every decision has both immediate and unseen fallout. The stakes create a strange paradox: outward stillness, inward chaos. This is why the briefing room is less a meeting space than a stage. The performance of calm is necessary to keep panic from spreading outward, but beneath that deliberate choreography, the atmosphere thrums with unspoken urgency. Everyone understands that the next sentence, the next slide, the next red phone call could tilt the balance of a nation. The quiet isn't comfort. It's the sound of minds racing faster than words can keep up. Number 5. Your file contains the country's fear, not just your facts. A government file with your name on it is not simply a stack of verified details. It is a barometer of worry. Each page signals how much unease your existence stirs inside powerful institutions. The more fear you create, the heavier the folder grows, even when hard proof is thin. What fills those pages is often less about confirmed actions and more about the anxieties you awaken, political, social, or strategic. Investigators don't just collect facts, they collect possibilities. A conversation overheard by chance can be written up as a potential lead. A coincidence in travel patterns becomes a link. A social media post taken out of context turns into a concern. These fragments accumulate not because they form a complete picture, but because each one feeds the question, what if? Fear thrives on what if. The more uneasy the question, the more paper it demands. This dynamic means your file can expand wildly, even when nothing new is proven. Agencies copy reports for multiple departments. Analysts add speculative notes to avoid missing a threat. Supervisors authorize further digging just in case. Each step is motivated less by evidence than by the dread of being caught unprepared. A thicker dossier looks like diligence, even when it's mostly conjecture. The irony is that the growing file becomes its own justification. Size begins to look like seriousness. If the file is this large, there must be something there. The fear that started the collection becomes the reason to keep collecting. And with every addition, the story of you drifts further from the reality of your life, shaped instead by the government's need to calm its own nerves. So when someone in power flips through that binder or scrolls through that encrypted database, they're not only seeing you, they're seeing the echo of the country's insecurities, political tensions, security nightmares, worst-case scenarios. The pages record their imagination as much as your history. The dossier's thickness is a measurement of national anxiety, not a ledger of your deeds. It is less a biography than a mirror, reflecting how frightened they are of what you might represent, whether or not you've ever given them a real reason to be afraid. Number 6, bureaucracy is the true predator. Bureaucracy hunts in slow motion, but it never stops. When a government decides to track you, it isn't the agents in dark suits or the generals in decorated uniforms who keep you in their grip. It's the paperwork, the relentless flow of forms, memos, and archived data that ensures you remain visible long after the original urgency has cooled. A single note entered into a database can outlive every person who typed it and every reason it was written. Once your name is logged, the system begins to multiply references to you. Copies are sent to different departments for coordination, each one spawning its own sub-files and cross-references. Regulations require backups, and backups require audits. Even if an investigator later decides you're irrelevant, the records can't simply vanish. Laws meant to guarantee transparency and accountability end up serving as chains, locking every keystroke into permanence. Unlike human hunters, bureaucracy has no need for motive or emotion. It doesn't get tired, it doesn't forgive, and it doesn't forget. It thrives on procedure. Each new rule or security measure adds another layer of retention. Old software is upgraded, but data is migrated forward. A memo written in a moment of panic can travel untouched through decades of reorganizations, outlasting the fears that created it. This quiet persistence is what makes the paper trail a true predator. It doesn't attack, it accumulates. Banks, airlines, telecom providers, and intelligence agencies all feed it. Your information is replicated across servers and storage vaults you will never see. Erasing one copy is meaningless when dozens more sit encrypted on drives scattered around the world. The system's strength is its distributed memory, a vast network where forgetting is treated as failure. Even when interest in you dies down, the trail continues to shape how institutions respond. Future background checks, visa applications, or security screenings can surface fragments of old concerns, stripped of context but heavy with implication. The people reviewing those fragments may not know or care why the notes were first written. They only see that you have a history, and that can be enough to slow a process or close a door. Bureaucracy doesn't need to chase you. It only needs to record you once. After that, the machinery of record-keeping ensures you remain present in the system's memory. A permanent entry in a story the state no longer remembers why it started, but will never stop telling. Number 7, attention is a silent warrant. When the president has been briefed about you, the act of attention itself becomes a kind of verdict. No courtroom has to open, no indictment needs to be filed. The simple fact that your name crossed the highest desk in the country sets a quiet but powerful process in motion. Curiosity at that level isn't casual. It carries the weight of resources, authority, and momentum. From that moment, every agency with a stake in national security feels pressure to dig deeper. Analysts look for patterns they might have overlooked. Investigators revisit old data with fresh urgency. Each person down the chain understands that the president doesn't get woken at odd hours for someone unimportant. Their unspoken mission is to uncover whatever justifies that interest, whether or not anything criminal exists. The search itself becomes the proof that something must be there. This is why attention behaves like a silent warrant. It grants permission without needing paperwork. Laws are written to limit specific actions, wiretaps, surveillance, seizures, but not to limit curiosity. When the highest office wants answers, oversight often bends. Access to private records, international data sharing, deep digital tracking, all of it can be framed as necessary background work. And once information is gathered, it tends to stay gathered, even if the original reason fades. The deeper danger is how easily attention reshapes perception. Once the president and top advisors have you on their radar, every coincidence can be read as a clue. A delayed email reply might look like evasion. A sudden trip could be labeled suspicious. Neutral facts become suspicious details because powerful eyes are already searching for a narrative. Formal charges may never appear, but the consequences are real. You might never know why opportunities shrink or why people seem hesitant to work with you. Your reputation can shift without a single public accusation. The quiet machinery of government moves as though a case exists, because the highest attention implies one must. That is the power of curiosity at the top. It doesn't need a gavel or a judge. The moment the president is briefed, you've effectively been summoned into a system that treats notice itself as evidence, and from there the scrutiny rarely runs backward. Number 8, the label. Priority is code for permission. When a government tags someone as a priority, the word sounds administrative, almost harmless. But inside agencies, that single designation flips a hidden switch. It doesn't just move your file to the top of a stack. It quietly expands what can be done to you. Rules that normally demand court orders, multiple signatures, or long approval chains suddenly become flexible. Priority is not a compliment. It's a green light. Ordinarily, investigators must follow strict procedures to get private data, track movements, or monitor communications. Those safeguards exist to protect ordinary citizens. Yet the moment a person is flagged as a national priority, the calculation changes. The assumption is that the stakes are too high to wait for every form or warrant. Internal guidelines, often classified, can allow faster surveillance, broader data sharing, and deeper digging without the usual layers of oversight. On paper, the laws stay the same. In practice, exceptions multiply. This label also grants unofficial permission. Agents and analysts know that leadership wants answers quickly, so they read priority as an instruction to push boundaries. A phone call that once required a judge's approval might now be justified under an emergency clause. A private message could be captured under a catch-all provision for imminent threats. Each step can be defended later as necessary, because the designation itself implies extraordinary circumstances. The danger is how quietly it happens. You won't receive notice. No official letter arrives to explain your new status. The systems that track you, credit bureaus, airlines, border databases, might only see subtle flags or unexplained requests. Meanwhile, data flows between agencies that normally guard their turf. Information about your finances, travel, or online life can be combined and analyzed in ways that would be illegal without the priority pretext. Once the label is attached, it tends to stick. Even if the original concern fades, no one wants to be the person who removes a priority marker and later faces blame if something goes wrong. The result is a long shadow of heightened access to your life, long after the urgency has passed. Priority is therefore more than a word. It is an invisible clearance, a quiet signal that the normal rules of restraint can be bent. It doesn't require new laws or public debate, only a stamp in a file that tells those with power, act first, justify later. Number 9, secrecy is a currency and you're now a deposit. Secrecy has its own economy, and once your name enters a classified file, you become part of that marketplace. Each page written about you, every intercepted email, every surveillance note, every analytic guess, carries value, not because of what it proves, but because of what it can buy. Intelligence agencies trade in information the way banks trade in capital. Your data is a deposit, and the more unusual or sensitive it seems, the more leverage it provides. Within government circles, classified details move like chips across a high-stakes table. One agency shares a fragment of your story with another in exchange for access to different intel or for political goodwill. An ally abroad might get a redacted version to strengthen diplomatic ties or to secure cooperation on an unrelated operation. Each trade enhances the status of the office holding the information, like a banker guarding a vault. The content of the file matters less than its rarity and perceived strategic worth. Because secrecy is valuable, there is incentive to keep the information hidden, yet constantly in play. Analysts can cite the file to gain attention for their projects or justify larger budgets. A single classified sentence about you might appear in briefings meant to sway policy or win internal turf battles. The mere existence of a high-priority subject becomes a bargaining chip in debates over resources and authority. This trading continues even if the original reason for collecting the information fades. Your data can be repackaged for new contexts, resurfacing when someone needs an example to support a threat assessment or a funding request. Each retelling reinforces its significance and, ironically, makes the secrecy surrounding it more attractive. Like money gaining interest, the file accrues weight over time simply by remaining classified and hard to access. For you, this economy is invisible but consequential. Information you never offered voluntarily becomes a form of currency passed between institutions you will never meet. You can't withdraw it, and you can't see how it's spent. In the world of intelligence, that makes you less a citizen and more an asset, someone whose private life has been converted into a token of power. Secrecy profits from possession, and once your details enter that system, they keep circulating as long as influence can be earned from your name. Number 10, surveillance isn't watching, it's sculpting. Surveillance today is far more than passive observation. It isn't just a camera on a pole or a record of where you went last week. Modern surveillance is an active force that studies your habits so it can quietly shape them. Every tap on a screen, every pause while scrolling, every purchase or late-night search becomes data that reveals what nudges work on you. The goal isn't merely to know you, it's to guide you. Algorithms digest this constant feed and build models of your preferences, your moods, even your likely decisions before you make them. Those models allow governments, corporations, and data brokers to test small adjustments in what you see and when you see it. A slightly different headline, a targeted ad, a well-timed notification can push you toward a choice that feels natural because it arrives wrapped in your own patterns. You think you're deciding freely, but the menu of options has already been arranged to favor a particular outcome. This shaping can be subtle enough that you never feel pressure. Maybe you spend a little longer online because recommendations keep matching your interests. Maybe you vote a certain way because the stories appearing in your feed heighten one concern and downplay another. The influence rarely announces itself. It doesn't have to. Your behavior shifts in small increments until the change looks self-directed. Governments see this as a powerful tool. If a population can be guided through invisible cues, adjusting public sentiment, reducing unrest, encouraging or discouraging certain actions, control can be exercised without force. The surveillance network becomes a feedback loop. Data in, influence out. And because the steering is based on your own predictable tendencies, resistance feels unnecessary. What makes this particularly potent is that it doesn't require false information or overt coercion. The sculpting works best when everything presented to you is technically true, just carefully prioritized. The pattern of what you notice and what you overlook is molded until the direction you take seems like the only reasonable path. So surveillance in its modern form isn't a passive watcher perched above your life. It's an active participant, continuously carving the landscape of your choices. You remain convinced you're steering the wheel, even as the road beneath you has been designed to lead exactly where someone else wants you to arrive. Number 11. Being known by the unknown changes your physics. When powerful institutions know more about you than you can ever know about them, it subtly alters how you move through the world. It's not just a psychological shift. It's a change in the social gravity around you. The knowledge that unseen eyes hold an extensive map of your life creates an energy that other people can feel, even if they don't understand why. Friends may notice it first. Conversations pause for a beat longer when you enter. Jokes land a little differently. There's an undercurrent of curiosity, sometimes admiration, sometimes unease, that trails you like static. They may not know any details, but they register that your life intersects with something vast and unseen. That hint of mystery acts like a magnetic field, drawing attention and altering dynamics without a word spoken. You feel it in yourself too. Even without concrete proof, you sense the asymmetry of information. They hold a file, you hold a guess. That awareness sharpens how you speak, where you go, how you weigh each small decision. It isn't paranoia so much as a new form of self-awareness, a recognition that you are both an individual and an object of study. Your gestures, once casual, now carry the echo of potential interpretation. This hidden attention reshapes relationships. People who might have taken you for granted start to calculate your importance. Some edge closer, hoping proximity grants them a brush with whatever influence surrounds you. Others step back, wary of complications they can't name. In either case, the perception of you expands beyond the facts of your life. You become a symbol, a person whose shadow is larger than their body. Power operates quietly in these moments. It isn't the kind you wield with authority. It's the kind conferred by other people's recognition that unseen forces are paying attention. Their behavior adjusts accordingly, and so does yours. You might speak with more care, carry yourself with more certainty, even if you never intended to. Being known by the unknown doesn't change your DNA, but it does change your physics. It bends the space around you, adding an invisible weight to your presence. Rooms feel different when you enter, because everyone senses, at least faintly, that you are connected to something bigger and less predictable than they can see. Number 12. The real danger is administrative immortality. A government file has no natural lifespan. Once your name is recorded, it gains a kind of immortality that you will never have. Policies, data retention rules, and backup systems are built to outlast every person who created them. You can disappear, move away, or even die, but the record remains, perfectly preserved and ready to be pulled back into relevance whenever it serves a purpose. This endurance is not accidental. Bureaucracies are designed to archive everything for the sake of continuity and accountability. Every memo, intercepted call, or analyst's note is duplicated, encrypted, and stored in multiple places. Updates to technology only deepen the permanence. Old files are migrated to new systems rather than deleted. Over decades, your digital trace can leap from one generation of storage to the next, untouched by time or decay. Because of that permanence, your file can be resurrected for reasons far removed from the moment it was created. An investigator looking for historical patterns might use it to justify a new surveillance program. A policymaker might cite it as a precedent when arguing for broader security powers. A political opponent could leak fragments to influence a debate. None of these uses require you to be alive, and none require the original context to remain intact. Worse, the data can be reinterpreted as the years pass. A conversation that was harmless decades ago might later be framed as proof of hidden motives, especially when filtered through a fresh set of fears or political goals. The meaning of each detail is endlessly flexible, allowing future readers to shape you into whatever example they need: a cautionary tale, a convenient villain, or a justification for new authority. This is the true danger of administrative immortality. The story of you becomes raw material for agendas you'll never witness. A single archived email or travel record can outlive every explanation you could ever offer, yet still influence decisions, laws, or public opinion long after you're gone. The file doesn't need your consent or your presence. It simply waits, silent and patient, until someone decides it's useful again. In that sense, a government dossier is not a record of the past, but a tool for the future, an unending life of its own, capable of acting on the world long after yours has ended. Number 13. Your privacy was never yours, just unclaimed territory. Privacy has always been less a right you fully owned and more a space you temporarily occupied. From the moment you were born, pieces of you, birth records, hospital files, school documents, started living outside your control. Over time, every transaction, login, and location ping added more territory to a map you never saw. What feels like your privacy is really just an area no one has officially claimed yet. The government, corporations, and data brokers understand this better than anyone. They don't have to break into your life. They only need to formalize access to what has been leaking out all along. The late-night presidential briefing is simply the moment they drive a stake into ground that was already open. The national priority label isn't a sudden invasion. It's the paperwork that turns unguarded space into documented property. Technology made the conquest easy. Every swipe of a debit card, every click, every biometric scan is a breadcrumb. Networks capture it, cloud services store it, and algorithms weave it together. What you think of as private moments, searching for a book, adjusting a thermostat, streaming a song, are signals, each one quietly transmitted and archived. For years, most of that data sits unused, like undiscovered land on a map. Then a reason arrives, and someone claims it. Once the claim is made, the illusion of ownership evaporates. The agencies involved don't need your consent because the infrastructure for collection was already in place. Laws written for convenience, terms of service, necessary security protocols become their charter. They aren't stealing, they're enforcing the rights you unknowingly gave away with every update and every "I agree" box you tapped without reading. What's unsettling is that the line between private and public was never fixed. It was always an evolving frontier, expanding as technology advanced and oversight lagged. The briefing is just the ceremonial planting of a flag, the acknowledgement that what you thought was your personal wilderness is now a controlled zone. Your privacy wasn't lost in a single night. It was never truly possessed. The briefing only makes it official. Someone finally mapped the territory you believed was yours and declared it part of their domain. And from that point forward, The ground beneath your life belongs as much to them as it ever did to you. Number 14. Power feeds on anticipation, not proof. Power rarely waits for certainty. In high-stakes security circles, proof is almost a luxury item, nice to have, but too slow to matter. What drives action is the possibility of what you might do. The people who decide whether you're a threat live in a world where tomorrow's headlines could punish them for hesitation. So they don't wait for you to cross a line. They act on the shadow of a line you might one day approach. This mindset flips the usual idea of justice. Instead of responding to crimes, agencies map out potential futures and treat them as if they are already unfolding. Data analysis, predictive algorithms, and risk modeling all feed this appetite. If a pattern of travel, communication, or spending looks even slightly like something dangerous, it can trigger surveillance or intervention. The reasoning is simple. A missed threat is unforgivable, but a false alarm can be buried in paperwork. The consequence is that your potential becomes a living force in rooms you will never enter. Decision makers debate your next move using simulations and probability charts, and each projection makes you a little more dangerous on paper. A casual association, a misunderstood remark, a spike of activity online, any of it can inflate the imagined future they're trying to preempt. This anticipation creates its own feedback loop. The more they act on what you might do, the more evidence they gather to justify their concern. Extra monitoring produces more data, and more data means more opportunities to find something suspicious. Even silence can be interpreted as strategy. They are not waiting for proof, they are harvesting possibility. From their perspective, it's easier to explain overreaction than underreaction. If nothing happens, they can claim their vigilance prevented it. If something happens, they can argue they saw it coming. Either way, acting early is safer for them than waiting for facts to ripen. So the real fuel for power isn't your actions, but your potential. It's the anticipation of what you could become that commands resources, shifts policy, and justifies intrusion. In that environment, innocence is irrelevant. What matters is the future you represent in their calculations, a future they refuse to let unfold on its own terms. Power in this story never announces itself with a trumpet. It arrives through quiet signals, a 3 a.m. briefing, a discreet label on a digital file, a silent nod that turns curiosity into authority. Each step we've explored shows how control isn't always about overt force. It's the slow, methodical capture of narrative, a hypothesis about you that hardens into policy, a moment of surveillance that becomes subtle influence, a file that outlives the person it describes. What begins as attention ends as ownership. Your life is translated into patterns, traded like currency, and kept alive in archives that will survive you. The true drama isn't in one dramatic knock at the door, but in the invisible architecture that can steer your choices, rewrite your story, and keep you present in systems long after you're gone. And yet, seeing it clearly is its own kind of power. Awareness breaks the spell of inevitability. It reminds us that privacy was never a given. It's a space we must keep reclaiming, moment by moment, choice by choice. The briefing at 3 a.m. is not the climax of the tale. It's the proof that the stakes are real and ongoing. So let this serve as both a warning and a spark. The file may exist, but the narrative isn't finished until you stop insisting on your own authorship. Understanding how these quiet mechanisms work is the first step in refusing to be defined by them. If you found this eye-opening and want to dive deeper into stories that reveal the hidden layers of power and control, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a moment. Like this video if it gave you that aha realization. Comment below with your thoughts or experiences, and share it with anyone who needs to see how the world really operates behind the scenes. Your support helps us keep uncovering the truths that matter. Stay blessed, always.